Yeah. And see, I'm such a nerd that I know exactly what that bike jersey means with the stripes and everything. That's the world championship jersey.
Thank you. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. And you taunt me with, you're like half naked post bike pictures. What's going on, Bob Cesca? He's all sweaty and he's like, a lot of climbing, and he posts like a hunky, shirtless picture of himself.
He weightlifts too. And so I have something in common with him.
I know. You have to come on. You and Kimberly come stay. You'll lift Buicks with him, and then we'll go bike riding, you and me.
Okay. Well, see, as I said before, after the first 12 miles, it would be, bye-bye, Stephanie.
No.
You would be like, just dropping me like a bad habit. You'd be off.
You said you'd have to rent a bike. I'm like, I have an extra one, but I'm picturing Bob on one of my, he looked like Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah, on a lady bike.
Little tiny bike.
Exactly right. Or just the teeny tiny bike. It'd be like, we'd have to stop by the circus first, and I'd have to do a couple of laps around the
Bob,
the
just for
ring,
people that have only listened on the radio, how tall are you?
I'm 6'4"
6'4" and
6'4".
You weigh in at
I weigh 230 pounds.
so you can get
That'd be a little
visual
Stephanie Miller
picture
bicycle.
of the giant mountain of a man Bob Cesca
on a lady bike.
And then maybe I'd also borrow a helmet. Yeah, borrow a helmet from you if I want to wear a helmet that looks like a yarmulke.
Yeah.
It'd be a teeny tiny little hat.
I've often described the first time I saw Bob Cesca in person. It was in Hawaii. I was on vacation. Bob was living there at the time. He appeared by a pool he had a Hawaiian shirt. He looked like he ate several Tom Sellecks and just became pure muscle. Became 3 Tom Sellecks made of muscle in a Hawaiian shirt. Aviators.
That's
whatever.
Weird.
Yeah. Oh, he was hot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he is hot.
Yeah, that's all gone away.
No, it is not. It is not.
Now I'm old timey.
Going in the Hooskow, see?
Just the amount of time you've been with us. All right, Bob. So where do we start this morning? You actually you were talking about Speaker Pelosi led a congressional moment of silence warning that we've passed 600,000 Americans dead. And you just said Trump never did this. I'm certain it never even occurred to him. No, because he'd be afraid he would be rightfully blamed for the amount of,
Right. He didn't want to call any attention to the fact that people were dying from COVID. Just another thing on the long list of horrible, horrible trespasses on his behalf. And this was one of the big ones as far as I'm concerned, because, you have, even a mass shooting, something like that, where there's, maybe 5 people who are tragically murdered. Then you have a moment of silence in their memory. When, at that time, by the time he left office, nearly 500,000 dead, not a single call, not even a suggestion of a moment of silence, because frankly, I don't think it even occurred to him to go there, to even from a political point of view. I don't think it ever fazed him whatsoever, because he's just not wired that way. He doesn't want to call attention to something terrible that he's partly responsible for.
Yeah, Ari Berman had a tough but fair tweet, Bob. He said the GOP traded 600,000 American lives for 234 Trump judges. And that's, I mean, I gotta say, people are talking about Jon Stewart. He did it. It was brilliant satire as it is when he does it on Colbert. He was talking about the fact that it probably was a lab leak, because that's exactly what they were studying, bat coronavirus at the Wuhan lab. I still have no idea how. To me, this makes Trump even more culpable, and I don't see what the difference is if it went from bat to human, either in the wet market or in the lab, right? It's his disastrous response that has put us at 600,000 dead. And it happened on his watch, largely because he pulled our people out of Wuhan and then trusted China on their transparency and how they were handling it.
Right. And the broader issue of where it started, how SARS-CoV-2 first escaped into the world, that's an important conversation to have, only because when it comes to the Wuhan Institute of Virology and anything that may have escaped from that building, when you talk about just what it really amounts to a safety issue, the problem is that all the red hats automatically go from, a safety issue at a lab to deliberate bioweapon sent to us from China. I mean, that's what Donald Trump said for all last year, that the coronavirus was sent to us.
Yeah, part of their brilliant plan was to kill a whole bunch of their own people first.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so that's why, I mean, that's why it's hard to talk about the Wuhan lab theory. And it's very unlikely. Fact checkers have repeatedly said that while it could have happened that way, it's very unlikely that it came from the lab itself. It probably came from the wet market, maybe an intermediary species in there.
I get Jon Stewart as a joke. He was like, there's a big, chocolate river outside Hershey, Pennsylvania. Like, where did it come from? Oh my God. Is it, so I sort of get it. They were studying bat coronavirus, but the reason they're studying that is because obviously a lot of these diseases, right? SARS and MERS have jumped species in that area of the world. Right. So that's of course why they were studying it. It's not like it was, Anyway. All right.
Usually they put those labs in a place where it's close to the existence of the virus in the first place. So they're not transmitting it over a long geographical area.
Yeah. So let's talk quickly about this DOJ thing. I don't ever know what the line. Isn't it all illegal, Bob? Isn't it all illegal? A House committee is asking former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and several former Justice Department officials to be interviewed about evidence that shows Trump and his allies tried to pressure the department to help him overturn the 2020 election. Carolyn Maloney said these documents show Trump tried to corrupt our nation's chief law enforcement agency in a brazen attempt to overturn the election he lost. Those who aided or witnessed Trump's unlawful actions and answer the committee's questions about this attempted subversion of democracy. At the very least, right? At the very least,
Yeah.
I usually keep it hidden.
Oh, I see.
Charlie, because God loves us and wants us to be happy. Tomorrow is Malcolm Nance Day. On the day of the Putin, meeting, Biden meeting. But Putin's favorite congressman, as you point out, Dana Rohrabacher, as it turns out, was at the Capitol on January 6th.
I know,
and you said
walking around with a guy who looked like Dr. Zhivago.
Yes.
He had this weird hat on.
Yes. Right. Putin's best friend in D.C. joined the mob on January 6th, and you said the past, it has many blasts. So
who thought of Dana? I haven't thought of Dana Rohrabacher in years.
Yeah. I know. So what did
ever since Kevin McCarthy said that there were only two people that were on Putin's payroll.
Right. Yes.
Trump and Rohrabacher.
I love what he said. Let's see. He admitted he did attend the Save America rally prior to the insurrection, although he claims he advised the mob not to storm the Capitol building. Do you buy that, Charlie?
Sure, I'm sure he stood on the lawn in front of the west front of the Capitol and said, "Hey, don't storm the Capitol."
Yes. And then he went on to blame leftist provocateurs for allegedly encouraging the angry mob to breach the Capitol. Charlie, am I missed something? Has there been any evidence of any kind that left-wing provocateurs were there or charged or arrested? Okay.
Of course not, but a lot of people are now pretending to believe it.
Well, I mean, Ron Johnson says it every other day, right? I mean, don't they? And first of all, what did he say? Oh, it was peaceful. They stayed within the rope lines. It's like you watched one piece of 9-second tape of them saying. I mean, Charlie, how do you? There's so much video that we've all seen of this. How do they think they can get away with this? Saying this was peaceful and they
because they get away with it. Because for the people they're aiming at, they get away with it.
Yeah.
How does Louis Gohmert get 72% of the vote the last time he ran?
Yeah.
Because people believe him. People are willing to believe this. We're getting document release after document release after document release from all these House committees showing how absolutely systematic the attempt to reverse the election was. They did everything but sell Brad Raffensperger to Somali pirates, and still we're hearing about Dominion voting machines and Italian hackers from space.
Yeah. And we just played Mitch McConnell. You said Mitch McConnell just fired on Fort Sumter, shot the Archduke, and bombed Pearl Harbor in a figurative political sense. He says, right, I am a mother, right, and I'm about to my mother. Like, he says what he's going to do. And McConnell drawn from the immortal wisdom of the Rube Pundit. Yes, exactly. But you just said, stated plainly, McConnell will never allow a Democratic president to successfully nominate a justice to the Supreme Court as long as he has the power to block it. And I guarantee you, whoever succeeds him in the Senate as Republican leader will not either. The Republican Party's war on the American Democratic Republic is now declared and open. There are only three options remaining that I can see. One, nuke the filibuster immediately. Two, a completely improbable and massive Democratic sweep in the 2022 midterms. Number three, nuke the Senate. If you're not willing to at least threaten options 1 and 3, then option 2 will remain out of reach. And you said, I think option 1 is the more peaceable solution, nuke the filibuster. And you said no matter what Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema think, McConnell was double dog daring the Democratic majority to do it. Call his damn bluff for once. Thank you, Charlie. I mean, he just says it right in the open.
Yeah, he told Hugh Hewitt that as far as he's concerned, Democratic presidents do not have the right to appoint Supreme Court justices.
Right.
Period. And he will make up whatever lie and use whatever tactic he needs to make sure it doesn't happen.
Can you explain? Oh, you probably can't explain anything related to Joe Manchin to me, but Mitch McConnell already blew up the filibuster for Supreme. Why does Joe Manchin continue to think that we have to keep this tradition or whatever it is? Because I don't believe at least in Manchin's case, I don't believe it has anything to do with justices. I believe it has to do with legislation. Mm-hmm. He doesn't like the For the People Act. He doesn't like the infrastructure bill. And I believe both of those are tied to the fact of where he gets his money from. Yeah.
Certainly the For the People Act is.
Yeah.
His resistance to that act I believe, is totally involved with the money he gets from the Koch family and everything else. He doesn't want the dark money provisions in that act. Mm-hmm. I think it's pure policy. I don't think it's him being, drunk with power or just a senatorial eccentric. I think he's got real problems with what Biden's trying to do.
Eric confirmed us that he turned off all his antique devices, his cuckoo clock.
So it will not be Antiques Roadshow in here today.
I know, but Eric, look, this is how pathetic I am.
That's a nice one.
But it's like a fake rotary, because it's not an actual rotary. It still has numbers, but I actually got one to look like a rotary dial phone, even though it's, okay.
You got to do the real deal.
Yeah.
That's how you know you're super old. Okay, good morning, Eric. I'm wearing my Madam Vice President t-shirt for you.
Oh, good.
Because thank you. Once again, you're the only one pointing out. You just said more awful Harris coverage. Condescending article. New York Times claims Harris, quote, is a politician who's always struggled to define herself. According to who? And you said New York Times continues illogical media narrative that Harris taking on substantive issues like immigration or voting rights is bad news for Harris. Thank you. I mean, why? Right?
Well, she really got beat up last week, right? Because people didn't like her answer to the Lester Holt question about going to the border.
Right.
And this was obviously during her trip to Guatemala and Mexico, and right-wing media and the Republican Party grabbed that clip, and then the mainstream press said, she's not ready for prime time. Lester Holt was basically badgering her. Why don't you go to the border? Why don't you go to the border? That's a Republican talking point. She's not in charge of border security, right? She's taken on this responsibility of dealing diplomatically with Central American countries, urging them not to come, providing economic aid to improve their local conditions. But the day that announcement was made, Fox News said she was in charge of border security. So they've been hitting her, and the mainstream press likes it. It's a good gotcha question. So anyway, the whole, CNN announced her entire trip had been overshadowed by that 1 30-second back and forth. Forget the fact that she gave a 30-minute press conference in Mexico and spoke, extemporaneously in great detail about the issues facing the region. None of that mattered. for one thing, there's just no drama in this administration. I mean, there is no, there's no White House gossip. There hasn't been a sentence of scandal in 5 months. So I think the press, the DC press really shows up for work that first day, every day, kind of wondering what are we going to do? Well, so I think they're anxious to go after someone, and they decided the gotcha press was going to really go, focus on Kamala Harris last week.
And as I was saying, Eric, Google it. There's a million pictures of her at the border. She was a senator from California. Just because she doesn't go for her camouflage Ted Cruz, boat in the Rio Grande photo op. As you said, she gave actually a really good speech about the root causes in Guatemala that she was there to talk about and to do something about. But this is what gets the press. Lara Trump, this is not, I guess, this was not wildly irresponsible. First of all, she married Eric Trump. So let's just, this on Fox
And I don't
News.
know what you tell the people that live at the southern border. I guess they better arm up and get guns and be ready. And maybe they're going to have to start taking matters into their own hands.
Okay.
So how is that not fire in a crowded theater, inciting violence? But you're right. That's the photo op, the inflammatory rhetoric. That's the right way.
Right.
So you're right. Somebody talking about policy, about root causes.
Right.
It's just, it really is endlessly infuriating, right? Something that's been going on for a zillion years is suddenly Kamala Harris's fault, right?
Right. And we saw that a month or so ago. There was a couple of headlines. Why won't Biden, fix the Middle East? Well, it's kind of complicated. It's been going on for about 7 American presidents. But you know
what's a start? They got rid of their right-wing corrupt crook,
Netanyahu,
and we got rid of our right-wing corrupt crook. So that's a start.
But a lot of the Harris coverage was classic example of what are Republicans angry about, right? Republicans gave bad reviews for her trip, so the press decided the trip was a failure. Yeah, and we've seen that over and over. And the point you made early on that I had highlighted in my column, this really weird media narrative that because she's being substantive, because she's taking on border immigration, because she's serving as a point person for the Democratic response to all these voter suppression laws, that is over and over as being portrayed as bad news for her. This is the most cynical, process-oriented way to view politics.
Yep.
I mean, what did Mike Pence do for 4 years? I don't think anyone has any idea. So here we have the first woman, the first vice president of color come in, take on these extraordinary responsibilities. And the cynical press says, oh, this is bad news because, it's probably going to fail. Yeah. I mean, that is just, I hate it. I hate it.
So to your point, Brad Raffensperger, former Republican, Georgia Secretary of State. Well, he's still a Republican, but anyway, he tweeted, the continuing false claims of a stolen election have led to violent death threats, intimidation, claims of prison time coming for election workers. They keep coming. Real leaders need to take steps to stop it. So far, they haven't. From Reuters, and as you tweeted, Eric, you said the lies are producing death threats, but Reuters won't call them lies. I mean, his wife is getting death threats. I mean, this is the point, is it is ongoing, and the press's failure to call that out is helping it continue, right?
Yeah, I mean, that Georgia Republican, remember at the height of that, the controversy in Georgia in January, we all remember him standing on the steps of the indoor at the Capitol, beseeching, I think it was him, beseeching Trump to stop this, stop the insanity. These people are going to be up late at night if they're waiting for Trump to do the right thing or the Republican Party to do the right thing. Yes, the big lie has just not only gained momentum, it's become the cornerstone of the Republican Party. And so that was a very interesting, good Reuters piece talking about how election officials across the country are becoming the target of these death threats and these harassment campaigns. But that Reuters story would not call them lies. They wouldn't use it in the headline, and they wouldn't use it in the body. And a week or so ago, I pointed to the Washington Post. I said, they're still using falsehoods, talking about this. Yeah. I mean, we talked about that for 4 years, not calling Trump a liar. We've talked about it with the big lie. The good news is New York Times, some of these other news organizations, CNN, are being much more aggressive. You have to be accurate. We cannot have these silly word games. Put away the thesaurus. Just tell the American people what's going on. So it's really disconcerting to see a hugely important player like the Washington Post talking about falsehoods we're almost in the summer of 2021.
Right.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right.
Wasn't it something to be just watch an American president again that speaks in full sentences, that is competent, that is, a lot of people had observations, but one of them, I loved, Michael Beschloss said, meeting reporters in Geneva, Putin shows none of that smirk that was visible when he emerged with Trump face-to-face in Helsinki. I mean, he looked like a guy who knows what he's up against, right?
Yeah, I mean, the side-by-side photos that you've seen floating around the internet of, Trump in this defeated posture and Biden in this, commanding posture.
Putin.
I think
you said Trump. You meant Putin.
Well, yeah. Well, Trump looked like he was there with somebody who had something over his head.
Yeah.
And Biden looked like he was there with the weight of the American people behind him.
Yeah.
So, world of difference. What just a few months can do.
Yeah. I mean, no, and I just thought, just the way he handled himself through the whole thing. First of all, I love, where's this? Who's our new hero? Ashley Scott from ABC News, right? I just love that. Like, America's back. Here's what she said to Putin's face.
The list of your political opponents who are dead, imprisoned, or jailed is long. Alexei Navalny's organization calls for free and fair elections, an end to corruption. But Russia has outlawed that organization, calling it extremist. And you have now prevented anyone who supports him to run for office. So my question is, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Wow.
Oh, my God. He was visibly, flustered. And
his answer was Black Lives Matter. So that tells you all you need to know about Putin and the folks who have been carrying his water for the last 4 years during the Trump years.
Yeah, and then she followed up. She said, you didn't answer my question.
We have that.
Okay,
we have that.
Yeah, here we go.
You didn't answer my question, sir. If all of your political opponents are dead, in prison, poisoned, doesn't that send a message that you do not want a fair political fight?
Yeah. I mean, it was fantastic. Eric Bollert, our friend, tweeted, Kremlin desperately wanted a joint Biden-Putin press conference today. The White House said no way.
Yep.
I mean, this is how you do one of these meetings, right?
Right. Well, and it shows who's in command here. It finally puts Putin back in his place after 4 years of an administration that groveled at his heels and had to be dragged into any kind of accountability with the Russians.
Right. But here, goes back to our conversation, Carl, about, your former party, my dad's former party, the GOP. Clint Watts, FBI, said, over the last 5.5 years, I've repeatedly been asked if Russian active measures work. Over the last 24 hours, I've repeatedly seen U.S. conservative media, pundits, and influencers adopt Putin's positions and at times rooting for Putin over their own President Biden. Yes, it matters. It worked. Yes, it worked. I mean, we see Russian active measures at work on everything, every day, right? They were behind the Stop the Steal. They were trolling. They were pushing January 6th to happen. They're pushing all these, anti-vaccine efforts, right? I mean, it is.
Well, when it comes to Russia, American conservatives went from being a hawk, went from being a hawk to a bunch of toads in just a matter of months, thanks to Donald Trump. And that's where they've firmly been planted ever since.
Right. So 68% of Americans, Carl, including 96% of Democrats, 63% of independents, 41% of Republicans say they support President Biden's proposed infrastructure plan via a new Monmouth poll just out. Where obviously there's endless frustration. Tell us what you read from the tea leaves from Joe Manchin yesterday, that it appears like there's some movement.
Well, I mean, there's movement. You've also got that bipartisan group of senators who are saying they want to get a deal done. Look, I am like any other progressive. I want a much more climate-focused approach to infrastructure. I want to make sure that we're doing right by our union labor and that we have as robust an infrastructure plan as possible. But I also want something to get done. So I expect the administration will be looking at where it can get the votes. And, until we have a much larger Democratic majority, we either have to point out that Republicans are not willing to play ball and not get a lot done over the course of years, or and wait for more Democrats to be elected, or we have to pressure them as much as we can and then get what we can legislatively done. So we'll see where we end up. Hopefully, this movement will push other people to get in line too.
So the two stories on Manchin yesterday, in a private call that was obtained by The Intercept, Manchin talked to major political donors during a meeting. None of this looks good. Sounds good in the beginning.
Yeah.
A meeting organized by the group No Labels, a big money operation co-founded by Joe Lieberman.
Yeah.
Oh, we have some thoughts on Joe Lieberman still from, I think it's Julie Brown's song, don't we?
Joe Lieberman, douche.
That funnels high net worth donor money to conservative Democrats and moderate Republicans. Interestingly, though, Carl, Manchin seemed open to filibuster reform, a private stance that contradicts his public one. Manchin told the meeting's attendees he needed help getting Republicans to vote in favor of a January 6th commission in order to strip the far left of their best argument against the filibuster. I mean, I guess that goes to saying, well, those of us on the left keep the point we keep making is if we don't have, if that's not bipartisan, what is? An attack on both sides of Congress on January 6th, that obviously Mitch McConnell and the Republicans keep proving our point. Why are you trying to preserve this tradition?
Joe Manchin's proving our point here, right? I mean, he's been playing dumb all this time, and now we know he's heard the message, right? He knows it's a good argument.
Right.
It's a good argument because it's a true argument. This is a perfect example of why we need the filibuster reformed.
Well, and also voting rights, as we keep saying, I mean, obviously he's getting and so this is where we say, Carl, you as a political activist, pressure does work. Not in every instance all the time, but he is getting a lot of pressure because if we don't have voting rights, we have nothing. Our democracy's gone.
Right.
So after extensive pressure from activists, lawmakers, former lawmakers, the NAACP and other organizations, Manchin's finally revealing what he would be open to in terms of new voting rights legislation. I agree with you on getting more senators, and he doesn't get to dictate everything. But anyway, he would be willing to support Election Day as a federal holiday. He support 15 consecutive days of early voting, mandated in all states automatic voter registration through state departments of motor vehicles. He also encouraged a compromise on voter ID. So did he finally, because at first he didn't meet with the Texas lawmakers, but then I think he did, Travis, who came to the Capitol to obviously talk about the horrible voter suppression law in Texas, right? So anyway, Democrats want to craft a voting bill that makes major changes to campaign finance reform. He's against that because obviously a lot of this we feel like is big money driven for him. Okay, so anyway, but he was caught on tape showing he's willing to alter the filibuster, though. So I'll take that as one silver lining, one crack of light, right?
I mean, it should tell everybody their marching orders for the foreseeable future is to keep pushing and to keep speaking up, because we're not going to be talking about infrastructure and voting rights forever, right? We will get those things done, hopefully, and we will move on to other things on the agenda, and guaranteed we will be back in this conversation talking about how we can get Joe Manchin to do the right thing.
Aye.